Hey friends, welcome back to the Special Kind of Motherhood podcast. Today I want to talk with you about the reason that you need to have a garden as a stressed out, busy mom caring for your special needs children. So let's get started. Welcome to the Special Kind of Motherhood podcast. This podcast is for moms who are parenting differently abled children. Maybe you desire to switch to a more natural lifestyle to improve your family's health, but you have no idea where to start. You're longing for more routines and time, but every time you try to implement those tips that you've spent hours researching, you realize that they don't work for your family dynamics. Hi, I'm Ashley. In this podcast, we will focus on implementing routines, switching to a more natural lifestyle, and uprooting those old mindsets that are keeping you stuck, so that you can plant yourself firmly in the truth that Jesus offers you. Our focus will be on creating small, customizable changes that will build upon one another over time to create real impact in your life. If you want to hear from a mama who has been raising several children with special needs and who knows how important it is to do this in a way that's sustainable and that doesn't add to your overwhelm, then this is the podcast for you. Pop in those earbuds, reheat that coffee for the third time, and let's go. Hey friends, I hope you're doing well. If you are a fellow special needs mama who is looking to switch to a more holistic lifestyle and also or possibly look at starting some kind of homesteading or growing your own garden, I would love to hear from you. I am currently doing some market research calls. This will be no sales or anything like that. I just want 15 to 20 minutes of your time so that I can get to know you better and how I can best serve you. As a thank you as well, I will give you a $10 gift card just to thank you for your time. And I just want to say spots are limited, so if you are interested, please reach out to me as soon as possible. I am going to leave the link to my email address and the links to my social media accounts below in the show notes. So if you are interested in doing one of these market research calls just to help me out, I would so appreciate it, and I would love to have you contact me. I hope you guys enjoy this podcast episode. So if I know you, I know that you are a mom who honestly devotes so much of your time and attention to helping your child or your children as they are going through certain struggles in life. And the thing that I have noticed and that I love and also want to try to help moms to kind of come out of at the same time is that as special needs moms, so often we put all of our time, all of our focus, all of our attention into helping our children. And while it's so admirable, I also know that it tends to lead to burnout. It tends to lead to us having health issues ourselves because we're not caring for ourselves, and then just carrying that weight and the burden and the stress of feeling like we have to fix everything for our kids, which is not true. And that's why I say I want us to find ways to come out of that. Like, I get you because I am you. I have been that mom who felt like it was all on me and who spent pretty much all of my time and attention trying whatever I could to help my children. And I really have come to this point of grace and of learning direction to get direction from the Lord on how to help my kids, which really helps me to come to a place of rest. But at the same time, trying new things, learning, growing. I think there's a very good balance. But what I know is that if you are like me, it is so hard sometimes to take time for yourself. It is so hard sometimes to actually do something for yourself without feeling guilty, without feeling like you could be possibly failing your child, because you should be spending that time helping them to learn how to speak, helping them to learn how to write, whatever the thing is that they're struggling with. You feel like your time and attention should be devoted to helping them with that. And while it should, I also think that we have to understand that if we don't care for ourselves, we're really not going to be able to help them in the best way possible. And so what I love about gardening, you may be thinking, what does this have to do with gardening? And the reason why I love it is because I think it's a great outlet to have time for yourself without the guilt of feeling like you should be doing something for your family. Because the way I look at it is that it actually is doing something for my family, because it's providing my family with healthy food. It is giving my family the opportunity to learn new skills. And so I can actually take time out in the garden by myself, and I don't have this guilt of feeling like I should be doing something for my children or I should be helping my children. Instead, I'm like, okay, this is actually giving back to my family while also giving to myself. And I do want to say, I think it's important to also find things that are just life-giving for us, even if that's only 5 minutes a day. But if you're in this space where you really are struggling with the guilt of feeling like you should not devote any time to yourself, then I think a garden can be a great transition time or a great transition activity maybe, because of the fact that it is also giving back to your family. And so it can be just a great stepping stone towards doing more stuff for ourselves without that guilt. And that's why I love it. I just love the fact that it gives us this opportunity to do something for us, do something that's going to provide us with enjoyment and with peace. And I love that. And so that's why I think absolutely it is so essential to have a garden. And I want to share some of the reasons why I think a garden specifically is beneficial, besides the fact that obviously, like I said, it's a great kind of transition activity if you're struggling with that feeling of guilt and of feeling like all of your time and attention needs to be dedicated to helping your children. And so for me, I came to the point where I realized I was going to have to start caring for myself. And the reason I came to this point is because I had a health crisis. And I really had to understand that I had focused so much on helping my kids that my body had suffered for that. And I really got to the point where I could not function, could not care for my kids. And I really had to start getting to the root of what is going on with me, what is going on with my health, and what am I doing? While yes, there were obviously some root causes that were going on. And as far as health and healing, I very strongly believe in pursuing root causes so that you can actually fix the problem, not mask it, not mask the symptoms. But at the same time, I also had to get very real about the fact that I was doing certain habits and behaviors and actions in my everyday life that were also adding to my health struggles, like not being able to manage my stress properly, like not taking time for myself, like not making sure I was consistently getting out in nature, making sure that my nervous system was calm and settled and regulated. And that's something I still struggle with. And I'm constantly working to regulate my nervous system because in my home with several special needs children, it can get very overwhelming and it can feel very chaotic to the nervous system. So it's something I'm constantly battling. And when your nervous system is dysregulated, you can have a whole slew of health issues just that stem from that. So what I love about gardening is that it is a great way, a great tool to help regulate my nervous system. And the reason why is because I'm getting outside in nature. I am getting my hands in the dirt. I'm being exposed to sunshine, which is going to help me to get adequate amounts of vitamin D. I am just making time for myself in the peace and quiet. I really try to not take my phone outside with me, or if I have it outside, I'm at least not using it. Because if I'm going to make time by myself to go into the garden, then I need to make that time count. And that means being quiet and being present in the garden, spending time praying. It's a great opportunity for me to pray for people. It's a great opportunity for me to look at the beauty around me, the beauty of nature, and to praise the Lord for the wonderful, beautiful things that He has created. It's a great time for me to worship Him. But if I have my phone with me, then I am very likely to get distracted. I'm not going to be as intentional about being in the moment. So I've shared before, I have times where the kids are helping me in the garden, but then I also have times where I am just doing stuff in the garden. And that time is time for me. That time is time for me to just de-stress, to try to regulate myself from a very chaotic day. It's a time for me to pray, to worship the Lord, all of these things that I've mentioned. And it's a very intentional time. But again, I'm not having these feelings of guilt because I'm saying I'm caring for my family. Like, not only am I caring for myself, I am also caring for my family while I do this. And that just feels like a win-win. And I'm all about that. I want to do more of that in my life. And so I just want to encourage you to really think about if a garden would be an opportunity for you to get out in nature, to get alone, to get quiet, to just have time to invest in yourself, in your health, in your mental health, in all of these things that we know that being outside in nature helps with. And that's the beautiful thing, is that God gave us this beautiful creation so that we could have it for our benefit, for our own health. And we have to be intentional about fighting for that and fighting for making time for nature, for creation. And I just think that the reason why I kind of want to go back to the topic of the cell phone, and another reason why there for a long time, I would just take my phone out with me and I would listen to a YouTube video or something like that. And what I found was that I just didn't feel as fulfilled whenever I was outside still being distracted by the phone, by the noise, it wasn't really giving me that quiet space because my whole day is loud. My whole day is input, sensory input. And so I really needed to be intentional about having that time without the noise. And so initially what I did was I stopped watching stuff, but then I would just have my phone with me. And then I realized, well, technically I'm still exposing myself to EMFs, which there have been some studies that have shown that it's possible that the EMFs kind of negate the benefits of being out in nature. And so I decided, okay, maybe I should just start either taking my phone off of me and setting it down somewhere in case someone in my family needs me. Of course, they could just open the door and yell for me. Or I could just leave the phone inside completely. And what I have found, and this is what I want to say, is if you are already getting out in nature and you don't feel like you're noticing any benefits, I would ask you, are you on your phone while you're out in nature? And do you have your phone on you while you're out taking care of your garden? Because what I have found is that whenever I just have my phone completely off of me, away from me, I am not being blasted with EMFs, for lack of a better way to describe it, then I get so much more. I feel so much more settled. I feel so much more relaxed. My nervous system is much more calm whenever I am away from the phone and also out caring for the garden. And so if it's something that maybe in the past you've tried and you've thought, well, this sounds nice, like, oh, it'd be a great stress reliever, but I tried it and it really didn't work for me, then I would just encourage you to ask, were you actually being intentional about the time out there? Were you turning off all the noise? Were you turning off any kind of input? Were you getting quiet and were you getting alone with the Lord? Were you really enjoying the beauty around you? Or were you distracted? Were you, listening to something else on your phone? I love to learn, and I love to learn by listening to things. So I listen to a lot of podcasts. I listen to a lot of YouTube videos. And that's why it was such a struggle for me to put down the phone, because it felt like, oh, I have a quiet moment to myself to focus. Why don't I listen to this thing that I was really wanting to learn about during that time? And there were two things that I found to be true about that for me. And one was the fact that because my nervous system was so dysregulated, my body was basically feeding off of the stress, and it was craving that constant input, even though it wasn't good for me. That's what I had set up this response in my body to think that that's what it needed. And so it was very hard for me to actually sit in the quiet because I was used to the constant noise, the constant input. So it was kind of working against me. My body needed the quiet, but because of my lifestyle and of being with my kids all day, my brain was convinced that no, it actually needed the input and the stress. And so it was very hard for me to just put the phone down. It was very hard for me to not think I've got to be constantly learning. The other reason was because I was wanting to learn new things to help my children, to help myself with my own health issues. And so I was constantly consuming information trying to learn. And that's where I had to come back to the Lord brings me to the right information whenever I need it. And while there's nothing wrong with learning, I think we have to be intentional about our time and not let it consume our time. And that can be very hard to find that balance, but I do feel strongly that the Lord can really guide and direct us in that. And so I just want to encourage you, again, I know this has been kind of scattered, probably more so than some of my other episodes, but the reason why is because I feel like our stress management and the ability for the garden to help us with that, it covers so many different areas of our life and our health. And so I really wanted to at least vaguely touch on all of that. This is something I want to dive in deeper with specific things on different episodes, but just to kind of give you that overall picture of what that has looked like in my life and why I have discovered that having a garden as a stressed out mom has been so important for me. We often think that we are already so overwhelmed and stressed out that adding a garden would just add another thing to create stress. And I would argue that if you do it in a way that is small to start out with, that isn't going to be a stress on your schedule, that it can actually be quite the opposite, especially if you're going to be very intentional about getting quiet, getting alone with the Lord, spending time to pray, just time to yourself. I think it can be extremely life-giving. There are obviously health benefits for it as well, but then just the mental health of getting out into the garden, getting out in nature, spending time for yourself. I just think that kind of like that example I gave with my cell phone, where what I needed was the quiet, But I was convinced, my brain was convinced because it had been feeding off of this cortisol reaction from the stress in my life. My brain was convinced that it needed the cortisol, it needed the stress. We kind of do the same. We think, okay, there's no way I can do a garden when really what we need is a garden. We actually really need that quiet time. We need that intentional time out in nature, but we've convinced ourselves that it would actually make things worse. More times than not, it is just not true. And like I said, start small. Start with a green stalk planter on your back porch, and then just spend 10 to 15 minutes tending to it every night and make that your time. It doesn't have to be something where you're spending an hour every single day. It's amazing what 5 minutes of peace and quiet outside can do for you, for your mental health, for your body. You can just feel yourself be able to exhale and just kind of breathe and relax. And that's the other thing I love to do is be really intentional about taking deep breaths whenever I'm outside, slowing down my breathing, calming my nervous system so that time that I'm spending for myself, I'm really making the most out of it that I can to offer the most benefits for myself. Not only does it offer benefits for myself, but I end up being a much more calm, present mom whenever I have taken that time to care for myself and to do something for myself. That is going to be all for this episode. I hope that you take the time to really pray through, if it's not gardening, what is it that the Lord has for you to do to create some time to give back to yourself? And this could be, like I said, something that only requires 5 minutes a day. But what is that thing that you could do to really invest in yourself and in your health? I would love to hear from you if you want to share what that is, or if you are starting a garden this year and you're wanting to just share how it's going, what you're planting, whatever it is. I would love to hear from you. I love hearing from you. I know several of you have reached out to me, and I just love getting to chat with you and learn more about you. So please feel free to reach out to me. I have all of my links down in the show notes below, and I will see you back next time. Hey, before you go, if you found value in today's episode or you learned something new, would you take a minute to share with someone else that you know would be blessed by it? I would also love it if you would leave me a review. This lets me know that you're enjoying the show, and I love hearing from you. You can connect with me further over on Facebook or Instagram. Until next time, rejoice in hope, be patient in tribulation, and be constantly in prayer. Romans 12:12.